Barcelona's tourist tax just doubled. From April the 1st, 2026, a couple spending 2 nights in a four-star hotel pays an extra €45.60 in tax before a single meal, drink, or museum ticket. And that is before we tell you about the water pistols.
Welcome to Phil and H Travel. Is it worth it? I am H and Phil is right. The costs in Barcelona have quietly shifted under your feet while the travel industry kept selling you the same postcard. Today we ask the one question that actually matters. Is Barcelona in 2026 still the best city break in Europe? Or has it finally crossed the line?
15.8 million people visited Barcelona in 2025. Locals fired water pistols at tourists on Las Ramblas. The city is banning every Airbnb by November 2028, and the tourist tax is now one of the highest in Europe. Let us get into it.
Right, so our whole mission today for this deep dive is really to take all of that incredibly intense, intimidating data you just laid out, figure out how to hold two completely contradictory truths at the exact same time.
Which is definitely not easy to do.
Yeah, no, not at all. Because, I mean, on one side of the scale, you have this undeniable reality, right? This city is still one of the most culturally profound, architecturally stunning places on the planet.
Oh, absolutely.
The food is brilliant. The Mediterranean light is incredible. The magic that put it on the map hasn't just vanished overnight. But on the other side of the scale, you have the financial friction.
And the institutional barriers.
Exactly. The landscape has fundamentally transformed. You simply cannot navigate this city on autopilot anymore. If you want to experience all that beauty without getting caught in the crossfire of this massive logistical shift, well, you have to radically update your playbook for 2026.
Yeah, and I want to focus on that phrase you use, caught in the crossfire, because we really need to unpack the sheer scale of the discrepancy here. It's genuinely staggering when you look at the raw numbers.
It really is.
We are looking at 15.8 million visitors pouring into a city that only has a permanent resident population of 1.6 million.
Right. Let that sink in.
Yeah, if you just visualize that, it means for every single person who actually lives there, works there, goes to school there, there are nearly 10 tourists constantly cycling through their streets.
Which is a massive burden on local infrastructure.
Completely. Now, obviously, I know tourism makes up about 15% of Barcelona's GDP, which creates this incredibly complex dependency. The city literally needs the revenue, but the infrastructure is just groaning under the weight of it, and things genuinely boiled over in 2025.
They did. And I think it's vital that we look at the events of 2025 not as isolated incidents of frustration, but as a real structural breaking point. The friction just became incredibly visible.
Yeah, it wasn't just a crowded summer.
No, the pushback was highly coordinated. I mean, we saw protest groups actively firing water pistols at visitors who were just sitting at pavement cafes on Las Ramblas.
Just people trying to eat their lunch.
Exactly. And people were walking out of souvenir shops to find tourists go home.
Yeah.
Stickers literally slapped onto their backs by passersby.
Which is wild.
And there were even smoke grenades set off right near the massive queues for the Sagrada Familia.
Wow.
Right? These weren't random acts of vandalism in the middle of the night. They were highly targeted, globally televised messages designed to create discomfort. And, well, from a purely statistical standpoint, they actually worked.
Did they?
Yeah, following that summer, for the first time in a decade, arrival numbers actually dropped by 7% in the second half of the year.
That is fascinating. And what really stands out to me is that the city government didn't just, stand on the sidelines and ask everyone to calm down. They actually brought down the legislative hammer to back up that local sentiment.
They did. They moved aggressively.
As we mentioned right at the top, as of April 1st, 2026, the tourist tax literally doubled. It's now one of the highest in any major European city. But the real jaw-dropper, the piece of legislation that completely rewrites the map, is the historic decision from June 2024.
The short-term rental ban.
Yes. The mayor confirmed they are revoking all 10,101 short-term rental licenses by November 2028. Every single Airbnb, VRBO, every short-term holiday apartment, just gone.
Yeah.
Completely eradicated.
It's a huge shift.
So looking at all of this, I have to raise a massive red flag for the listener. If a city is actively deploying legislative tools to aggressively price me out, and locals are organizing physical protests against my presence in the streets, why are we even considering going?
Well, yeah.
If you're a listener planning a vacation, shouldn't you just take the hint, pack your bags, and go to Italy instead?
That is the most logical reaction you could possibly have to this data. Why go somewhere where you feel actively managed or, even resented? But to understand the reality on the ground, we have to look really closely at the mechanics of this friction.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, the friction you're seeing on the news isn't about all tourists. It is entirely about how and where people are touring.
Yeah.
The legislative moves and the protests, they aren't directed at a visitor quietly enjoying a local dish in a neighborhood plaza.
Right.
They are directed at the unsustainable hyper-concentration of visitors who are treating a very specific historic center like a disposable playground. The Gothic architecture, the food culture, none of that has lost its magic. The challenge for you as a traveler stepping off a plane in 2026 is simply accessing those things without stumbling blindly into those flashpoints.
So what you're saying is that this isn't a blanket ban on visitors. It's more of a geographical bottleneck.
Exactly.
So to understand why this friction exists, we really have to map out exactly where those 15.8 million people are actually going and, I guess more importantly, where they refuse to go.
Precisely. And the core mechanism driving almost all this tension is what we call the 1580 rule.
The 1580 rule.
Right. It is a stunning logistical reality. Basically, you have 80% of the total tourist traffic crammed into roughly 15% of the city's actual geography.
Wow.
We're talking about a very tight rectangle. Las Ramblas, the Gothic Quarter, the Barcelona beachfront, and the immediate perimeter around the Sagrada Familia.
Yeah, I was looking at the street layout data for the Gothic Quarter in July, and we have to remember these are medieval lanes.
Right. Built for horse carts.
Exactly. They were built for foot traffic and small carts centuries ago. They were never designed for a modern throughput of thousands of people an hour. So in the middle of summer, they become physically impassable. You literally cannot walk at a normal human pace.
No, you can't.
It is just a solid, shuffling wall of human beings, shoulder to shoulder, baking in the heat.
And when you are caught in that crush, it ceases to be a minor travel inconvenience, you know? It quickly becomes the defining characteristic of your entire trip. If you stay entirely within that 15% zone, your overarching memory of Barcelona won't be the architecture.
It'll just be staring at the back of other people's heads.
Exactly.
Right.
Staring at heads and trying not to trip over someone's suitcase.
Yeah.
But the fascinating part, the part that actually saves the trip, is what happens the moment you step outside that invisible perimeter.
The livable zones.
Right. You cross the street, and suddenly you enter the livable local zones. Neighborhoods like Gracia, Poble-sec, San Antonio, or Sarria. The contrast is totally jarring.
In a good way.
In an amazing way. These areas operate on a completely different frequency. You suddenly hear Catalan being spoken on the streets instead of just English or German. The prices in the restaurant windows drop significantly. The public plazas are filled with actual residents letting their kids play. And the friction, that hostility we just talked about, it practically vanishes into thin air.
It sounds to me like Barcelona has accidentally turned into a massive, sprawling theme park, but 80% of the visitors are stubbornly refusing to leave the main entrance plaza.
Yes.
They're all just standing by the front gates complaining about the crowds. But if you just walk 10 minutes to the left, past the initial bottleneck, you basically get the whole place to yourself.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it. It is a total failure of dispersal. And this geographical clustering is intrinsically tied to the calendar, too. The timing of your visit dictates the severity of the crowd problem just as much as your location does.
Right, so let's break down that calendar.
Well, April and May, or September and October, these are the absolute sweet spots. You're looking at temperatures in the low to mid-20s Celsius, which is incredibly comfortable.
Perfect weather.
Yeah. And you're dealing with maybe 60% of the peak summer crowds, meaning you can actually walk up and get a table on a terrace without an hour-long wait.
But then we get to June through August, the peak summer window that everyone defaults to because of, school holidays.
Oh, June through August is unmitigated chaos. I mean, let's look at the compounding factors. In June alone, the Sonar Electronic Music Festival dumps an additional 120,000 visitors into the city over a single weekend.
That's insane.
The infrastructure simply cannot absorb it seamlessly. And by July and August, the ambient temperatures are routinely hitting 32 degrees Celsius.
Which is hot, but
But that's just the air temperature. The radiant heat coming off those dense stone streets in the old city makes it feel physically oppressive. There is very little airflow in the Gothic Quarter.
I can imagine just baking in the stone.
Exactly. And furthermore, hotel prices during this window spike by up to 60% compared to the shoulder season.
Oh.
Conversely, if you are a traveler purely interested in culture, museums, and food, and you really don't care about swimming at the beach, November through March is genuinely uncrowded.
Really?
Yeah, it's cold by Mediterranean standards, maybe 10 to 14 degrees. But the hotel rates plummet,
Yeah.
and you actually have the physical space to breathe and absorb the city.
Okay, so if we accept that mastering geography and timing is the only way to survive the trip, let's walk through the exact reality of arriving. Like, let's put the listener right there. You've landed at Barcelona El Prat Airport, Terminal 1, you grab your bags. What are the immediate logistics of getting into the city, and how do you avoid making your first mistake right out of the gate?
Well, the good news is that El Prat is a highly functional, modern airport with excellent transit links. You basically have three primary choices to get into the city center.
Okay.
The Aerobus is by far the most popular and efficient for most people. It takes about 35 minutes to reach Plaza de Catalunya. The buses run constantly every 5 to 10 minutes, and it costs 7.50 Cs a one-way. It is painless.
Super easy.
Very. Then you have the L9 Sud Metro line, which is slightly cheaper at 5.1 euro. It takes about 45 minutes, but it does require a transfer depending on where you're staying.
Right.
And finally, a taxi to the center operates on a fixed rate of roughly 35 to 50 euro, depending on your exact destination and, the amount of luggage you have.
Right, so let's say you take the Erebus. You step off the bus at Plaza de Catalunya, the sun is shining, and here is where almost every single visitor gets that classic split impression of the city.
Oh, totally.
You start walking down Las Ramblas for the very first time. Now, visually, looking up, it is an absolute knockout. It's this wide, sweeping, tree-lined boulevard, incredible 19th century architecture framing the sky. And you see the grand entrance to the famous Moqueria market pulling you in.
It looks like a postcard.
It does. But experientially, looking straight ahead at eye level, within 10 minutes, the grim reality hits you.
It hits you very hard, and it breaks the illusion almost instantly, because that central pedestrian lane down Las Ramblas is essentially a slow-moving, congested conveyor belt.
Yeah.
You are navigating through a gauntlet of selfie sticks, aggressive menu touts, physically stepping into your path, trying to drag you into subpar restaurants.
Which is so annoying.
It is. And you've got human statues demanding coins for photos and street vendors selling mass-produced souvenirs. The stunning visual beauty of the street itself is entirely masked by the aggressive commercial theater of it all.
And since you brought up the Bulgaria market, I really have to push you on this because this is constantly listed as a top 5 must-do in the world on every travel blog. Is the Bulgaria genuinely dead to the locals, or is it just one of those things where it's trendy for travel bloggers to be snobbish and claim they know a better spot? Like, did the people of Barcelona completely abandon their own historic flagship market?
It really isn't snobbery. It is a literal, documented shift in local commerce, and frankly, it is a textbook tragedy of over-tourism.
Really?
Yeah. Get it 15 years ago, the Bulgaria was still a genuine, functioning ecosystem.
Right.
But today, the stalls that used to sell fresh whole fish to local grandmothers for their evening meals have been systematically replaced.
Replaced by what?
Well, now you find stalls selling prepackaged, brightly colored fruit cups, Jamon displays that are arranged purely for aesthetic photo opportunities rather than actual slicing, and freshly squeezed fruit juice for 8 euros a pop.
8 euros?
Right. It has been entirely reoriented toward immediate on-the-go tourist consumption. But, the beauty of Barcelona is that the authentic commerce didn't just evaporate.
It just moved.
Exactly. It simply migrated away from the flashbulbs. Locals now do their daily shopping at the Mercat de la Basteria in the Gracia neighborhood, or this spectacular Mercat de Santa Caterina in Samper. These markets are authentic, the quality is incredible, the prices are normalized, and they are practically devoid of the massive tourist crowds.
That is deeply fascinating. It's like the real beating heart of the city just quietly packed up its bags and moved a mile down the road while the tourists were distracted looking at the fruit cups.
That's exactly what happened.
And if you want to talk about a contrast to that Las Ramblas arrival, look at the Zona Alta. Let's say instead of walking south from the plaza into the crowds, you take the funicular up to the hilltop above the city, arriving in the Sarria neighborhood.
Night and day.
The shift is unbelievable. You are suddenly walking through quiet, tree-lined streets with gorgeous old mansions. You find these small, hyper-local tapas bars where you can sit with a vermouth and look at views sweeping all the way down from the Collserola Hills to the Mediterranean Sea.
It's stunning.
It feels like an entirely different country, let alone a different city, and yet almost zero first-time visitors ever see it because it isn't in the 15% zone.
Which brings us to a crucial logistical point about navigation and how you actually integrate yourself into these alternative zones, and that is language.
Right.
Barcelona is officially bilingual, operating in both Catalan and Spanish. Now, in the massive tourist funnels, English is ubiquitous. You will never struggle to order a coffee in English on Las Ramblas. But when you venture into those local zones like Sarria or Gracia, Catalan is very much the working language of daily life.
So what should a visitor do?
What is essential for the listener to understand is that attempting even a basic greeting in Catalan, or even just standard Spanish, is met with genuine warmth. It acts as an immediate social signal that you are putting in effort, that you respect the culture, and that you are not part of the extractive tourist problem.
A little effort goes a long way.
Exactly. And to physically access these areas, your best tool is the metro system. It is brilliantly clean, expansive, and highly efficient. When you arrive, you want to bypass the single tickets and buy the T-Casual card.
The T-Casual card.
Right. It's 12 euro for 10 individual trips across Zone 1, which basically covers practically every single neighborhood and monument you will want to visit.
All right, let's ground this in the budget. You've navigated the airport, you've wisely picked a local zone, and now you have to actually pay for a bed to sleep in. This is where the landscape completely changes. That massive April 2026 tourist tax hike fundamentally alters your baseline budget, and it does so regardless of what kind of traveler you are.
It really spares no one.
Let's break down the harsh realities of this tax, tier by tier, so the listener knows exactly what they are in for.
Let's start at the most economical level, the backpacker. Even for the most frugal, careful traveler, the floor has been raised. A standard hostel dorm bed in a central area like the Gothic Quarter or Elborn runs somewhere between 18 and 35 euros a night.
Okay, pretty standard.
But now, the front desk must add the new Euro 2.25 nightly tourist tax per person. So your 18 bed is immediately pushed over 20 euro. On paper, 2 euros doesn't sound like a catastrophe, but for a budget traveler stringing together a multi-week trip across Europe, that daily bleed chips away significantly at your food or museum allowance.
Then we step up to the mid-range couples,
Sure.
the standard vacationers, and this is where the math starts getting genuinely aggressive.
Very aggressive.
Let's say you book a nice, clean, 3-star hotel in the Example District, which, by the way, with its wide streets and great architecture, is exactly where we suggest you base yourself. The room rate is between 120 and 180 and 80 a night, but the new tax bracket for a 3-star property is up to $8.40 per person per night.
Right. So a couple checking in is paying almost 17 euros a night, just in pure tax. If you decide to treat yourself and upgrade to a 4-star hotel, averaging 196 to 236 euros a night, the tax jumps to 1140 euros per person.
It's a huge leap.
Think about that. That is nearly 23 euros every single night, handed straight over to the city government before you have even walked out the door to buy a cup of coffee.
Exactly. It acts as a massive, mandatory hidden premium on the entire city. Now, if you are traveling as a family, the logistical challenge compounds the financial one. First, you have to prioritize location.
Where should families look?
Well, you absolutely want to avoid basing a family in the dense, loud Gothic Quarter. The narrow streets echo terribly, and the late-night noise from bars will completely ruin your children's sleep.
Nobody wants that on vacation.
No. The example is much better, but many savvy families are now targeting the Diagonal Mar area. It's a modern district, much quieter, and it gives you fantastic, easy access to the beaches without dealing with the absolute chaos of Barcelona. Plus, you're only 15 minutes away from the city center by metro. And what about the luxury traveler? If you're flying in to stay at an iconic property like the Hotel Arts down by the water, or the Mandarin Oriental, where you are paying anywhere from 350 euro to well over 700 euro a night, the city now mandates a flat 15 euro per person per night tax.
Yep.
So a couple is dropping 30 euro a day just for the legal right to exist inside a 5-star hotel.
Which, frankly, when you are operating at that specific budget level, a 30 euro tax might feel like a minor rounding error on the final bill. The luxury market is highly insulated from these friction points. But, and this is a big but, it is the final category of accommodation that represents the biggest, most dangerous shock for listeners planning trips in 2026 and 2027.
The short-term rentals.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Airbnb countdown trap. This is the one that is going to catch so many people off guard.
Without a doubt. First, you need to firmly understand that if you are booking an apartment right now, you're booking into a dying, actively hostile market.
Yeah.
As we established, by November 2028, these rentals will be entirely illegal.
Just banned outright.
Right. But right now, in 2026, the city isn't just waiting for that clock to run out. They have deployed a brutal, punitive tax rate to actively discourage you from using them today. The tax on short-term rentals has skyrocketed to a maximum of 12.50 seat per person per night.
Wait, I really need to do the math on this out loud because it is staggering.
Go for it.
Imagine a family of four. They're sitting at the kitchen table, budgeting their summer vacation based on a travel blog they read from, 2023. They find a two-bedroom apartment online and book it, thinking they just scored a massive deal compared to 2 hotel rooms.
Like the classic strategy.
But 4 people multiplied by 12 post-EC means they are generating 50 seaters a night in pure tax. If they stay for a standard 7-day week, they're going to get hit with a $353 surprise fee at checkout or buried in the fine print of the booking platform.
Yep.
That is completely outrageous. How does this not entirely kill the classic cheap European apartment week that an entire generation of travelers grew up on?
Well, it doesn't just kill it, it completely obliterates it by design.
By design.
Exactly. The city government realizes they can't simply flip a switch and empty the bathtub while the tap is still running. So instead of just scooping out the water, they're aggressively ripping the plumbing out of the walls.
Wow.
If you are not factoring in that massive $350 tax liability from day one, your entire vacation budget will capsize the moment you arrive. The era of the hyper-cheap, unregulated Barcelona apartment is dead. The city is using targeted taxation as a blunt instrument to force visitors back into highly regulated traditional hotels.
So you really have to do your homework.
Yes. As a consumer, you have to completely change how you shop. You must compare the all-in final price of an apartment against the all-in final price of 2 hotel rooms. More often than not in 2026, the traditional hotel is now the more predictable and sometimes significantly cheaper option.
Okay, so if you are paying this massive, unavoidable premium just for a place to close your eyes, you have to be surgically precise about how you spend your money on food to balance the scales. You just cannot afford to make culinary mistakes. And the food scene in Barcelona is truly a tale of 2 wildly different cities.
It is the ultimate honest hierarchy of quality versus location.
Yeah.
Barcelona undeniably possesses one of the strongest, most vibrant culinary cultures in all of Europe. But the terrible, unavoidable irony for visitors is that the absolute best of it is practically invisible from the main tourist corridors.
I think we need to paint a vivid picture of the trap here. Let's talk about the €60 frozen yellow seafood paella on Las Ramblas.
Oh, the classic trap.
It is essentially a financial initiation ritual for uninformed tourists. You walk down the street, you're tired, you sit down at the first place with the picture menu. The waiter brings out this massive steaming pan of bright neon yellow rice that is almost certainly dyed with cheap food coloring rather than actual saffron.
Oh, absolutely it is.
It's studded with rubbery, frozen seafood that was reheated in a microwave, and you pay $60 or more for the privilege of eating it while watching the crowds walk by. Now, contrast that exact scenario with taking the metro just a few stops away to Poble-sec, walking into a loud, bustling neighborhood bodega, and ordering the Menú del Día.
Right, and the Menú del Día is, without question, the greatest secret weapon for any traveler's budget in Spain.
Tell us how it works.
It translates to the menu of the day, and it is a legally mandated workers' lunch menu. For a flat rate of anywhere between 13 and 17 euro, you are served a starter, a substantial main course, fresh bread, a drink, which incredibly often means they just leave a quarter bottle of wine on the table for you, and a dessert or an espresso.
That's incredible value.
It's amazing. And the beauty is that it relies on whatever fresh, seasonal ingredients the chef sourced from the market that morning. It is exactly what the local mechanics, office workers, and shop owners eat on their lunch breaks. It is fast, it is authentic, and the value is completely unmatched.
The day-to-day price contrasts between the tourist zones and the local zones are just wild to me.
Yeah.
If you want a coffee like a basic cortado in a local nondescript cafe with metal chairs, it will cost you maybe 1.8 euro.
Yep.
That exact same volume of coffee, served in a ceramic cup on a terrace near the Sagrada Familia, will suddenly cost you 6.
It's robbery.
And if you go to Elborn for pinsos, those little slices of bread topped with meats and cheeses, a single bite is 1.50 euro. But if you order a tourist tapas platter on a main square, you get a plate of deep-fried frozen calamari and patatas bravas for 40 euro.
Just sad.
Even the supermarkets have rigid tiers. If you want to buy your own groceries, you have to find a Mercadona or a Lidl for the absolute best local value. If you rely on those tiny tiny, brightly lit Carrefour Express convenience stores that are clustered right next to the monuments, you are paying a massive, punishing markup on everything from a bottle of water to a pack of sliced turkey.
And, beyond where you eat, we really have to discuss the etiquette of when you eat, because timing dictates the entire authenticity of your experience.
Oh,
The Spanish schedule.
Exactly.
yeah.
The cultural clock in Barcelona is shifted entirely. Lunch is a substantial affair eaten strictly between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. Dinner, crucially, does not start until 9 p.m. at the absolute earliest, and often peaks around 10:30 p.m.
Right.
If you see a restaurant that is completely full at 6:30 p.m., you can guarantee with 100% certainty that it is exclusively serving tourists, and the food will reflect that demographic.
I am going to be incredibly blunt about this to save our listeners some money. Eating dinner on Las Ramblas at 6 p.m. is basically wearing a neon sandwich board that says, "I am a tourist, I don't know the rules, please overcharge me for bad food."
That's a great way to put it.
You are volunteering to be fleeced.
It is a harsh assessment, but from a purely logistical standpoint, it is entirely accurate. The local dining hour is 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. If you force yourself to adjust your body clock, take a siesta in the afternoon, and eat late, you bypass the tourist traps and unlock the real, vibrant culinary soul of the city.
So let's take all of these moving parts. The inflated hotel taxes, the wildly variable food costs, the transit, and crystallize them into hard, out-of-pocket daily budgets. We need to run this through a clear matrix so people know what to expect.
Right. So we can categorize the financial reality into 3 distinct tiers for 2026. First, the low tier. This is for our dedicated budget travelers.
Okay.
They're staying in a hostel dorm and paying the daily tax. They are strictly eating the menu del dia for lunch and maybe grabbing a cheap empanada for dinner. And they're utilizing free monument zones, like walking the exterior of Park Güell rather than paying to go inside. Even with extreme discipline, they are looking at 62 to 99 euro a day.
Which is a lot higher than it used to be.
It is. Second, we have the mid-tier. This is your standard couple staying in a solid 3-star hotel. They are mixing local, affordable dining with maybe one nice dinner out, and they are paying for one major attraction entry a day. That will run 90 euro to 145 euro per person per day.
Okay, that's manageable but significant.
And finally, the high tier. These are visitors in 4 or 5-star hotels, taking taxis instead of the metro, booking fine dining reservations, and ordering cocktails. At that level, you are easily clearing 200 to 400 plus per person every single day.
But I was looking at the notes, and there is a brilliant concept here that overrides all of those tiers. It's called the 50-meter rule. Walk me through the mechanics of this, because it seems like the skeleton key to the whole city.
The 50-meter rule is perhaps the most crucial financial principle to internalize when visiting Barcelona. The concept is actually very simple. Commercial real estate prices on the main tourist thoroughfares are astronomically high.
Right, the rent is crazy.
Exactly. To pay that rent, restaurants must serve low-quality, high-margin food at hyperinflated prices to a high volume of one-time customers.
Because they don't need repeat business.
Right. Therefore, a budget traveler who stays in a residential neighborhood, uses the metro to get around, and eats at corner neighborhood bars can spend 70 euros a day and have an incredibly authentic, joyful, high-quality experience. However, another traveler can make the exact same categorical choices, booking a basic hotel, ordering casual tapas, drinking a couple local beers. But if they execute those choices within 50 meters of Las Ramblas or the Sagrada Familia, their daily spend instantly balloons to 160 euros.
That is wild.
They spend more than double the money for a drastically inferior, more crowded, and lower quality experience. Geography is absolute destiny for your wallet in this city.
I hear that, and I completely grasp the economic logic. But I have to put myself in the shoes of someone who just wants to relax. Like, is it actually enjoyable to constantly be running a geographical algorithm in your head just to grab a cold beer in the afternoon?
I know, it sounds exhausting.
If you are constantly vigilant, constantly hyper-aware of where you are on the map and calculating your distance from a monument, doesn't that ruin the whole spontaneous vacation vibe?
That tension you are describing is the core, unavoidable reality of visiting a hyper-touristed city in 2026. Yes, initially it feels like work. It requires mental discipline and planning. But the paradox is that once you understand the map and commit to the local zones, it actually completely removes your anxiety.
Because you aren't constantly worried about getting scammed.
Exactly. You aren't sitting at a table constantly wondering if you're being ripped off because you've deliberately removed yourself from the trap zones. Once you settle into the slower, local rhythm of a neighborhood like Gracia or San Antonio, you stop doing math, and suddenly the authentic city genuinely opens up to you.
And budgeting carefully only protects your wallet. You also need to protect your time from the city's structural traps. Time is your most precious asset on a short city break. So we have identified 3 major logistical traps that still catch almost everyone off guard. Let's dig into trap number 1.
Trap number 1 is what we call the queue tax. It is the absolute destruction of the walk-up visitor.
Right. Let's say you followed our advice. You saved your money, you avoided the bed paella, and you decide you want to see the architectural heavyweights. The Sagrada Familia or Antoni Gaudi's Casa Batlló. You cannot just walk up to the door anymore.
No, you absolutely cannot.
The entry for Sagrada is a steep 35, and Casa Batlló is €29. But the trap isn't the monetary price, it's the sheer lack of physical access. If you read travel blogs from 2018 or 2019, they will cheerfully tell you that you can just show up early, grab a coffee, and wait in line for an hour to get in. Those blogs are actively destructive today. The Sagrada Familia now regularly sells out its digital ticket inventory up to 3 months in advance during the peak summer season.
Yeah, and what you're describing is a phenomenon we track called information decay. Following the massive, unprecedented post-pandemic travel surge, the sheer volume of daily visitors completely broke the old analog ticketing systems.
The physical ticket booths.
Exactly. The major monuments were forced to institute rigid, timed-entry digital ticketing systems, just to maintain basic fire safety protocols and crowd control inside the buildings. But the internet is still heavily littered with outdated, highly ranked advice. The permanent, unbending reality now is that if you land in Barcelona in July and walk up to the Sagrada Familia hoping to buy a ticket at the physical window, you will not be going inside. The physical ticket windows are practically decorative at this point.
But how is it possible that millions of people still show up completely blind to this reality? Why is the global travel industry failing so spectacularly to communicate this basic logistical hurdle?
Because the industry, at its core, profits heavily on the romantic illusion of spontaneity. Selling the dream of a breezy, carefree Mediterranean getaway moves far more airline seats than telling consumers they need to build a rigid Excel spreadsheet just to see the inside of a church.
Yeah, that's incredibly true.
But the hard truth is, spontaneous, day of monument hopping in top-tier European cities went extinct in 2023. You must book your itinerary before you even leave your home country.
That brings us to trap number 2, which we touched on with the 50-meter rule, but it bears repeating. The neighborhood price cliff. It is a dramatic, immediate 30 to 60% drop in prices the moment you go just one metro stop outside that main tourist rectangle.
It's basically an invisible wall.
Exactly. The ultimate fix here is geographical strategy. Sleep in the example district where the hotels are solid, dip into the hyper-crowded center during the day strictly for your pre-booked monuments, and then completely retreat to outer neighborhoods like Gracia or Poble-sec to eat your meals and spend your evenings.
And trap number 3 is the Airbnb countdown, which we discussed at length, but it is the trap that destroys the most budgets. You must never compare the base advertised rate of a hotel to the base advertised rate of an apartment. You must manually calculate that €12, €50 per night per person tax first before you look at anything else, or your working budget is entirely fiction.
Okay, moving beyond the financial hazards and the scheduling traps, we have to talk about the physical realities of navigating these incredibly dense, chaotic zones. We need to talk about safety, solo travel, and basic human comfort.
Well, the overwhelmingly positive news is that violent crime against tourists like muggings or assaults is exceedingly rare in Barcelona. Both the UK and US travel advisory boards consistently list Spain at the lowest standard precaution level for violent threats.
Which is great peace of mind.
It is. But the real threat, and it is a massive systemic one, is stealth.
Let's call it what it is. Barcelona is widely considered the pickpocket capital of Europe. It is practically a professional sport down there.
It really is.
The primary hunting grounds are very specific. The L3 metro line, particularly around the Liceu and Dresans, stops that service Las Ramblas and the Barceloneta beach in the height of summer. And what's crucial to understand is that they aren't aggressively slicing bags open with knives. They rely on highly sophisticated psychological distraction methods.
Exactly. It relies entirely on breaking your situational awareness. Someone bumps into you hard on a crowded train, or someone intentionally drops a handful of coins right at your feet.
And your natural instinct is to look down or help.
Right. Or someone aggressively steps into your path, trying to sell you a glowing trinket. Sometimes, it's even someone pretending to be a bewildered tourist, unfolding a massive map and asking you for directions. In the 3 seconds that they have your absolute undivided attention, An unseen accomplice is smoothly sliding your phone out of your pocket or unzipping your bag to take your wallet.
It's so fast.
It's entirely nonviolent, but it is incredibly efficient and deeply violating.
It sounds to me like pickpocketing in Barcelona isn't a mugging. It's a highly choreographed, multi-person piece of street theater where you are the unwitting star and the price of admission is your passport.
That is an incredibly accurate way to describe it. It is theater. But the countermeasures, while simple, are absolutely mandatory. You must wear crossbody bags, and they must be positioned on the front of your chest, resting on your stomach, never on your hip or back.
Front only.
Yes. Your phone must go in a zipped front pocket, never in your back pocket, especially when walking down Las Ramblas. And the golden rule: if a stranger engages you unprompted in a major tourist corridor, you must immediately assume it is a distraction technique, secure your belongings with your hands, and keep moving without breaking stride.
What about solo female travelers? Is the city welcoming on that front?
Generally speaking, it is highly safe and very socially welcoming. The vibrant tapas bar culture makes it incredibly easy to pull up a stool at a bar, order a drink, and naturally integrate into a crowd without feeling isolated.
That's great.
The one specific geographical caveat we flag is the Raval neighborhood, which sits directly to the west of Las Ramblas. It has gentrified significantly in recent years, with cool vintage shops and cafes, but after midnight, the narrow streets can still harbor aggressive, unpredictable street behavior.
So where should they go instead?
For evening outings, a solo traveler is much better off sticking to well-lit, busy areas like El Born, Santoni, or Gracia.
Let's also touch on basic health and comfort. The tap water is perfectly safe to drink from a bacterial standpoint, though it tastes heavily of municipal chlorine, so most people end up buying bottled water anyway. But the summer heat is no joke.
It's brutal.
When those massive, towering Gothic Quarter stone walls bake in 32-degree direct sunlight all day, they act like thermal batteries. They radiate that trapped heat back into the narrow streets all night long. You have to stay aggressively hydrated.
So after outlining all of this intense friction, the doubling taxes, the sold-out ticket traps, the crushing crowds, the sophisticated pickpockets, and the literal water pistols, we have to step back and answer the most fundamental question of this entire deep dive.
What makes it all worth it?
Exactly. What actually justifies putting up with all of this? What makes the juice worth the squeeze?
Let's talk about the highs. Because when Barcelona gets it right, when you slip past the friction, it is absolutely untouchable. Best moment number one, standing inside the Sagrada Familia at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday morning.
This specific experience is the ultimate antidote to all the logistical cynicism we've just discussed. If you go at midday, you're just shuffling through the aisles with 700 others sweating loud people.
Yeah, that's not fun.
But if you execute the plan, if you book that 9 a.m. slot 3 months out for a trip in April or September, and you arrive 5 minutes early to be the first one through the doors, it is profoundly transformative.
Paint the picture for us.
When you step into that massive central nave before the sprawling tour groups arrive, and you tilt your head back to look up at Gaudi's towering, tree-like vaulted ceiling, there is a near silence that commands respect. The sharp morning light hits the eastern stained glass windows, and it throws these incredibly vibrant, forest-filtered blues and greens across the pale stone columns. It is a genuine, silencing experience of pure architectural genius that photographs simply cannot capture.
But I'm naturally skeptical, so I have to ask. If the Sagrada Familia processes over 15,000 visitors every single day, does that 9 a.m. slot actually feel spiritual, or are you just at the very front of the stampede for a very pretty theme park ride?
It is a delicate balance. If you linger too long, the illusion shatters. By 9:30 a.m., the ambient noise level rises as the larger groups filter in, the echo becomes a dull roar, and the spell breaks.
Right.
But for those first 20 minutes, when the air is still cool and the space feels vast, it transcends the crowds. It is a masterclass in human achievement, and yes, despite all the planning required, it is absolutely worth the €35.
Best moment number two, a picnic from the Mercat de Santa Caterina. We mentioned this earlier as the local alternative to the ruined Boqueria. It is instantly recognizable by the spectacular, undulating, brightly colored mosaic roof designed by the architect Enric Morales. This is where real local chefs go to source their ingredients.
It's fantastic.
For 18 to 25 euros, you can walk from stall to stall and buy an unbelievable high-quality picnic of local, paper-thin charcuterie, fresh seasonal fruit, artisanal cheese, and a great bottle of wine. You take that out to a park, and it is the authentic, beating soul of the city's food culture.
And conversely, we have to highlight the honest disappointment so you don't waste your time. The lows. We have already heavily warned you against the Las Ramblas Paille, but it bears repeating. Skip
Yep,
it.
please skip it.
True, authentic Catalan food relies on different staples. You want to seek out pan con tomate, which is rustic bread rubbed with fresh tomato and garlic, or fideuà, which is similar to paella but made with short noodles instead of rice, or escalivada, beautifully roasted vegetables. Seek those out in the local zones instead.
And the other massive, predictable disappointment, Barcelona beach in the height of summer. 4 million people visit that tiny strip of sand in July and August. By 11 a.m., it is literally standing room only. You cannot see the sand for the towels.
Nightmare.
And the prices at the adjacent beach bars, the chiringuitos, are borderline extortionate. If you actually want a relaxing Mediterranean beach experience, you just take the metro 15 minutes further up the coast to Bogotel or Marbella beaches. They are wider, dramatically less crowded, and infinitely more pleasant for a swim.
Which brings us to a vital concluding part of our analysis. If all of this logistical friction, the required advanced booking spreadsheets, the hidden taxes, the geographical algorithms, and the constant vigilance against pickpockets, if all of that sounds entirely too exhausting for what is supposed to be a relaxing vacation, where else can you go to find this specific Southern European magic?
The alternatives. Alternative number 1. San Sebastian up in the Basque Country of northern Spain. If your primary driver for travel is food, you abandon Barcelona and you go here. It boasts the highest concentration of Michelin stars per capita in the entire world.
The food is incredible.
The Pintas culture is just amazing. You wander from bar to bar paying $1.50 a bite for world-class culinary miniatures. You have La Concha Beach, which is a gorgeous sweeping bay. And crucially, looking at the news, there are 0 anti-tourism water pistol protests, 0 overnight tax doublings, and 0 sweeping Airbnb bans. The infrastructure actually handles the load.
And alternative number 2, Porto, Portugal. If the total financial cost of Barcelona is your main barrier, Porto is the immediate answer. It delivers a highly comparable romantic architectural and culinary experience, world-class wine cellars, stunning river views, narrow historic streets, and a deep Mediterranean feel, but at roughly 60% of Barcelona's total cost. A fantastic central hotel is 80 to 130 euro a night. A massive, high-quality dinner with excellent wine is 40 euro for 2 people.
I hear that. Porto is undeniably cheaper, and San Sebastian has undeniably great food, but neither of them has Antoni Gaudí.
No, they don't.
Neither of them has the Sagrada Familia or the surrealism of Park Güell or the specific history of the Gothic Quarter. Aren't we just passively trading away world-class, entirely unique global heritage simply to save 40 euros a day and avoid standing in a crowd?
Well, that is the exact philosophical trade-off you are making. You are actively trading access to iconic, globally recognized monuments for peace of mind, ease of transit, and financial sanity. It depends entirely on what you prioritize from your limited time off. Do you want to be a spectator to monumental history, which in 2026 requires intense logistical work and premium money? Or do you want to effortlessly relax in a beautiful culture without constantly fighting for physical space?
So we've mapped the costs, we've mapped the crowds, the friction, and the alternatives. It is time for the final verdicts, the is it worth it matrix. Let's run the profiles.
Let's start with the backpacker. The verdict is yes, but with very clear, rigid conditions. You can still experience this city on 65 to 80 euros a day, but you have to emotionally accept that the breezy 28 euro day Barcelona of a decade ago is dead and buried. You must isolate yourself in Gracia or Poblano, live exclusively on the midday menu del dia, and skip the expensive paid interiors of the major monuments.
For the mid-range couple, the verdict is yes, but you must navigate deliberately. If you have the budget to spend 300 euros to 380 euros a day for 2 people, you can have a truly amazing time. But you have to deploy strategy. Base yourself in the wide streets of the example, book your monument tickets 3 months out, and retreat to local zones at night for dinner. You're spending the exact same budget as the tourists caught in the Gothic Quarter trap, but you're buying a radically superior trip.
For the family, yes, but with incredibly careful logistics. You must avoid July and August entirely. The radiant heat and the crowd stress are simply too much for young children to handle. Base yourselves in the quieter Diagonal Mar district, book every single activity in advance, and mathematically brace yourselves for that massive, unavoidable Airbnb tax shock at checkout.
And finally, for the luxury traveler, it is an absolute, resounding yes. Despite the friction at the lower ends, this remains one of Europe's truly great luxury cities. The 30 a night tax is negligible at this tier. The high-end dining scene, the private tours, and the five-star hotels match Paris in quality and execution, but they still beat it significantly on overall value.
But stepping back from the individual budgets, all of this data raises one final, vital, provocative question that extends far beyond the borders of Catalonia.
Oh.
Yeah, Barcelona is currently acting as the ultimate test case for the rest of the continent. As other major overcrowded European cities watch Barcelona successfully wield staggering taxes and total legislative bans as blunt weapons to actively curate and control the volume of their tourists. Are we looking at the permanent end of the spontaneous budget European city break everywhere?
That is the honest verdict from Phil and H. If this guide helped you decide, follow Phil and H Travel. We publish new honest destination guides every single week. We will see you on the next one.